Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Examiner. I'm joined in the studio today by Byron York, Chief Political Correspondent. And Byron, we're going to talk about Kamala Harris's interviews, of which there have been somewhat more, to the extent that she might regard it as a media blitz, even if it's only still a fraction of what the other side is doing. Let's first take a look at a clip of her talking on The View.
What do you think would be the biggest specific difference between your presidency and a Biden presidency?
Well, we're obviously two different people, and we have a lot of shared life experiences. For example, the way we feel about our family and our parents and so on. But we're also different people, and I will bring those sensibilities to how I lead. And so the influence of a personal experience will have its impact on the presidency.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
There she was asked a question which surely could not have come as a surprise. How are you different from Joe Biden? And she must expect these questions, but she seemed to whiff it, didn't she?
Totally stumped. I mean, first of all, she went to the friendliest possible place. And almost all of the interviews that she has scheduled, Howard Stern, Colbert, a podcast called Call Her Daddy, a number of places are very, very pro-democratic, pro-Harris, very friendly. And so is The View. She was introduced at The View, by the way, as the next president of the United States.
Oh,
so it's a happy...
The sympathies are pretty clear.
It's a happy place for her.
Yeah.
And so the question is, what could be more fundamental? Even your friends want to know this if you're running for president. How would you be different from Joe Biden? And then she didn't answer that. And then, to her credit, the co-host, Sunny Hostin of The View, came back and said, well, again, looking back, would you have done anything different? So you're thinking about this. You're thinking about inflation, grocery prices 20 to 25% more than they were when they became president and vice president. Obviously, the flood of illegal crossers at the border, the disaster in Afghanistan. You think there must be something that she would do differently.
Sure.
And she came up with nothing. Yeah. And is it that she literally had not thought of this? That's kind of malpractice, I guess.
Yeah.
Or is it that she feels that since she still is the vice president and Joe Biden is the president, she can't come out and appear disloyal, or what? But the fact is, voters are going to want to know what she's going to do, and if they're going to elect her, they're going to want her to be different from what they've had for the last 4 years.
Doesn't this, Byron, get to one of the really serious, fundamental, base-level problems that she has, which is that she wants to present herself as the candidate for change. She talks about herself being the new generation of leaders. At the same time, because she has to distance herself to some extent from Biden, at least in her image, because she knows that a lot of people say that the country has been going in the wrong direction, etc. At the same time, she keeps saying that she was instrumental in the big decisions of this administration, that she was the last person in the room. Doing both of those things is a pretty tough act to pull off, isn't it?
Yes. By the way, she's about to turn 60, which makes her maybe the oldest of the new generation in Washington. But this is always a problem for a vice president. Now, usually a vice president is running after a president has served 2 terms. And the nation is often kind of ready to move on to a different party after 8 years of one president. That's the way it works. So the vice president is trying to distinguish himself from those 8 years where he's just been the vice president. It's a hard job. This is absolutely unique because you have a president, first time, just pulling out and saying he's not mentally and physically up to the task of being president again. How is she going to distinguish herself without saying, boy, you know, we really blew it at the border. That's, what a mess. And Afghanistan, gosh, wish we had that one back. I mean, what's she going to say? So it's even if she were a skilled politician, which it appears she's really not,
Right.
it would be a tough job.
Yeah, very, very difficult to finesse. But so let's turn. That was on The View, which, as you say, is the friendliest possible venue for her. But she was on 60 Minutes and was interviewed by Bill Whitaker. And this is, although not a hostile venue, is certainly not a softball venue like The View. Let's have a look at a clip from that.
What I was asking was it a mistake to kind of allow that flood to happen in the first place?
I think the policies that we have been proposing are about fixing a problem, not promoting a problem. Okay?
But the numbers did quadruple.
And the
under
numbers
under your
today,
watch.
because of what we have done, we have cut the flow of illegal immigration by half.
But should you
we
have
have
done
cut
that?
the
Should you
flow
have
of
done that?
fentanyl by half.
Bill Whitaker asks Kamala Harris about the border, about the enormous surge. And he asks the question in 2 or 3 different ways. And she responds, but she does not answer. And eventually, after having made a mess out of the answering, she also kind of gets cross with him for continuing to ask the question as though it is not something she expects from her interviewers. This was a really bad performance, wasn't it?
It was the worst imaginable performance. First of all, as you know, on the campaign trail, her line on the border has been that a bipartisan bill in the Senate, which was introduced in February 4th of this year, would have solved the border problem had Donald Trump not deep-sixed it, not sabotaged the bill and it didn't pass. That's been her answer to the whole thing. She tweaked it a little bit on 60 Minutes by saying, oh, we actually, Joe Biden and I, actually proposed a bill on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2021, that would have solved it, and it didn't go anywhere. And then she literally says, fast forward to the Senate bill. Okay, she's telling us to start at January 20th, 2021, and fast forward to February 4th, 2024. And Bill Whitaker is saying, wait a minute, what about those 3 years in between there?
Right.
Was it a mistake to let this huge flood of illegal border crossers in? And that's the question she would not answer. Whitaker, to his credit, persisted, and he never got an answer.
And that gets to the final question I want to deal with, and it's right at the fundamental level. Kamala Harris has been criticized for not doing interviews, and she is doing some now. She hasn't done a press conference, and I assume she's not planning to do a press conference until Election Day. Just going to ignore the press as a general body of, inquisitive people. But the reason, what we've seen in these interviews is the reason that she doesn't want to give answers is that there are no good answers. That she and Biden have botched their government for the last 3.5 to 4 years in a way that 60% of the country, of voters, of the public, thinks it's going in the wrong direction. Isn't that fundamentally what the problem is for her?
Every time a new president comes into office, he gets a period of time that can last as long as a year in which he gets to blame his predecessor for everything that happened and everything that's going bad for him. Now we're almost 4 years into the Biden presidency, and Harris is still trying to blame Donald Trump for everything, and it just won't work. 4 years is too long to blame the guy before you. And so you're absolutely right. The biggest being inflation, in which the Biden-Harris spending fueled inflation, the disaster in Afghanistan, the withdrawal there, and of course the border situation. So you have 3 things that mean a lot to the American people, and there is no good answer. And by the way, just on one other issue, on 60 Minutes, Whitaker asked her just a very straightforward question about Ukraine, and she had no answer at all. I mean, I left there thinking, wow, if she becomes President of the United States, I have no idea what she's going to do.
And yet, Byron, and we'll close it here, and yet the race is like this. She's perhaps marginally ahead in some of the swing states, and seems to have, I think we were talking about it earlier, perhaps a 3% advantage in the popular vote.
Could be.
So it's exceptionally close. It's extraordinary that such a candidate could be that close. But We're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Political Perspectives, and we'll be back next time.